Part 5 The Creation King. Chapter 1 She Will Always Love You. As promised, my story. The last few snowflakes descended from the clouds. Upon the grass, they melted. I felt my tears freeze before the land returned to normal. The image of mother, lifeless, engraved into my eyes, and would never disappear from my memories. Why did it have to be this way? As I had stopped crying, I still accompanied my mother. There was nothing forcing me or making me move, and I didn't feel like I had a reason to. Darkness engulfed me, and all I could think about was my family. All I could feel was sorrow and guilt towards my sister. Was there something I could have done? After what felt like hours, Julia came to get me. She tried to lift me up and take me away, but instead I walked up to my sister. I embraced her while blocking her vision so she wouldn't have to look at Mom. Dora was as devastated as I was, but a mind as young as hers had different ways to cope with situations like these, ways I couldn't begin to understand. Captain Barton walked up to me and went down on his knees. He looked at me, and before he could say anything, I knew what he wanted to propose. I signed him it was okay. Barton and the other sailors walked up to my mother and took her away. I couldn't watch. It wasn't until Dora started crying again I did so too. I wished it was all just a bad dream. New Year's Eve, I realized soon after. No one in Dragonia celebrated it, nor did they celebrate the prevention of the end of the world. Autumn had ended the moment we started our quest, and even though I made the snow disappear, I soon expected it to return for winter. The last few days felt like an entire winter season, but unfortunately, it had barely begun. Drake, wake up. Julia. You coming outside? Yeah, alright. I'll wake Dora. The next morning proved everything was very real and to my regret, not a dream. After the week passed of me being asleep, any morning after wasn't any different. But I wasn't surprised, as for an instant, I thought my mother woke me. It was Julia instead. Even though she surprised me with her, how should I put it, kindness that day, I couldn't bring myself to show her my appreciation or act like I was alright. But I knew her well. I knew she understood that. The same went for my friends. But there was one person I knew I had to be there for. While Julia woke her, I got out of bed. With the clothes on I was wearing for a week straight, I exited the palace. Hi, Drake. Ready? Harold asked. It was painful to see how bad he felt for me and how hard he tried to remain supportive. I reacted to Harold's question with a nod, and we headed to an area next to the side of the palace. Soon enough, I saw dozens of people had gathered. Perhaps it was even 100. The funeral was about to begin. Would you like to say a word, Drake? Calypso asked. She seemed saddened. I hadn't asked her yet how she knew my mother and how she didn't know I was her son all this time. Neither had I asked why Romans and my mother knew each other. But there was a time for everything, I thought. I'll wait until everyone is here, I said. I watched the open coffin in which my mother laid. She was surrounded in flowers. They didn't look very lively, though. I tried my best not to cry, but I simply failed. As I tried to look away, it became a little easier. I then noticed a few familiar faces. Captain Barton, Roland, Gregory, Francis, and a few other sailors I didn't recognize. I only learned of the names of the crewmen recently. Darren was with us, and next to him stood Errol's, Chop, Duzel, Lawrence, and Lenny. The other dwarves and elves from Purcell's were present as well. Guaru and the people from Taraku had joined, surprisingly enough. And it didn't stop there. Even the people from the far lands in Flatus and Mammalian were there for my mother. At first I didn't know where they were from due to their modern clothing, but later on I heard more about Mammalian from my friends. The man who took care of me during my dark nights, Tom, apparently, was at the funeral as well. Though what angered me was the absence of Haven and the other gods. Where were the gods with all of this? I think that day I completely lost faith in them. I wasn't ready for it, but when Dora and Julia arrived, it was time for me to inform everyone of recent events. I soon realized they didn't care anymore about my appeal or how I came over to them, and my words came over very bland. Even I realized that. We've been looking for a CK in order to stop an ice age. Well, we did it. What I never would have guessed was that CK was my very mother. She sacrificed herself. She said the initials stood for the Creation Queen. This might not make much sense, but I soon realized that in my language, Queen's written with a K. She showed me she was in possession of these phenomenal powers right before she died. She was capable of controlling the four elements, and I'm assuming that's why she was called the Creation Queen. No, I did not know who she really was. I did not think she knew of this place. I knew nothing. So if you know anything, please let me know. I hope this informed you all well enough. Please, go celebrate. The world's saved, isn't it? Everyone was quiet. There was not a sign of joy. I had never felt such compassion from so many people. What surprised me, even more, was that a group of people, the ones from a meeting, started raising their hands and made a fist. Soon, everyone joined in. None celebrated, but instead, they showed me their supportive endeavors. But that is all it was, because what none knew was that soon these endeavors would merely be attempts. None knew I'd soon have to face everything alone. But for that time being, it was an extraordinary sight. It moved me. Since a long time, I felt the rain again. For the first time, I was glad it wasn't snowing, even though it gave the funeral that typical somber vibe. Drake, Calypso spoke. Yeah? I need to tell you something. About my mother? To my surprise, she shook her head. There's more behind what happened. Do you know more about it than I do? She nodded, yes. What is it? Something seemed to scare her. Never. Something blocked her from speaking. Calypso? She started screaming after gaining a massive headache. Alive! She couldn't say what she wanted to say. I'm sorry, Drake. Calypso was in pain and had no clue why and what to do. She took a few faltering steps towards the ravine and seemed like she couldn't control her balance. Calypso? I said worriedly. You won't get me that easily, she said. Before she could fall into the ravine, she moved the water from the creek towards her and engulfed herself. Whatever was hurting her, Calypso knew how to stop it. She froze the water and ended up stuck in a block of ice. I was perplexed. What just happened? Several people approached and some started saying we needed to get her out. I told them we shouldn't. Whatever happened, it was trying to kill her. If she'd be free again, who knew what would happen? But she gave us something that day. She gave us a way to save those who would undergo the same thing, and Calypso wouldn't be the last. The funeral had become even more sorrowful. The people had to be assured of Calypso's safety. It wasn't until late that the people started heading home. Some had a long journey ahead of them. Everyone was worried. Everyone knew something else, something darker was going on, but no one had any idea of what exactly it was. Especially me. I was so foolish. I wasn't ready for all the condolences, but weirdly enough, not a lot of people came to me. If it was because they figured I'd be best to leave me be, which I indeed preferred, or if they didn't know what to tell me, wasn't sure. Though there was a chance there was another reason. When the people left, some looked at me with an uncommon look. They seemed angry. What did I do? They couldn't be thinking that what happened was my fault, right? They told me Calypso would be alright. She was cut loose from the pillar of ice and what was left was carried inside the palace. However they kept her, it was supposed to leave her alive, for the time being. Mom was being buried. I figured it was the last time I would ever see her. As I stared at the burial, Maya went to stand next to me. She laid her hand on my shoulder and smiled. Ready? She asked. I nodded and we left the scene. Tom requested to talk to you. We entered the palace. He's in there. I opened the door Maya pointed at and entered the room. Hi, I said. Hi, Drake. Come in, take a seat. I went to sit on the table with my feet on the chair. I'm sorry for troubling you at a time like this. It's fine. There is something you should know. Calypso isn't the first to experience this. What do you mean? A friend of mine died a few days ago. He was trying to tell me something important, but he was stopped. Stopped? Those who know of the truth are silenced. Do you know the truth? Tom seemed scared of something. Follow me, he said. He exited the room and I followed. He left the palace and stopped in front of the ravine. Drake? You can bend water. Sorry? I know you know. You know what you are capable of. I don't have a single clue to what exactly it is I've been able to do these last weeks. Creation, Drake. The four elements are in your grasp. How? Why do I possess such power? It's your mother. It's who she is, was, who you both are, Drake. If I feel this, you know what you have to do. What are you talking about? I want to tell you what I know, but there's only one way to save me if I'm prevented. I tried to write it down, but every time he won't allow me. What won't allow you? Drake, several years ago your mother was befriended with someone Tom, who swore, no, I can't do it. And it was as I feared. Tom was prevented from telling me anything. What was going on? I can't. Tom was in such pain. Dark. He leaned back and was about to fall. I had no choice but to try and save him. Spirit. I pointed my hands at the creek in the ravine and tried to pull the water upwards. To my surprise, I succeeded. I'm sorry, Drake. I engulfed him in a ball of water. I made a fist and somehow managed to freeze the water. I saved his life, but this couldn't go on forever. Who else would be willing to try to provide me with information? Was there even still anyone who knew what was going on? Another one? You have to be kidding me. The approaching centaurs seemed angry. They all lifted a block of ice and walked back into the palace. Might want to invest in some mittens against the cold for jobs like these. Yeah, this isn't gonna end any soon, I bet. I was terrified and felt horrible. Were Calypso and Tom really going to be okay? When the centaurs entered the palace and the doors closed, I couldn't remain on my feet anymore. I fell on my knees and grasped the wet grass. It was still cold, but my anger and fear quickly changed that. I felt like I was overheating and about to lose it. Drake? Julia approached me. I could feel it because of vibrations in the earth. It was the first time I realized I could sense that. But before she got to me, I couldn't control what my sorrow caused. I was aware of what was happening but couldn't stop it. I was burning the grass around me and making the earth vibrate. My emotions caused destruction upon the land and I screamed in anger. Drake! Drake, wake up! This isn't you! Julia tried to say. Drake, stop! Julia surprised me and was able to cool me down. I stopped screaming and I was cooling off. I'm sorry. I can't control it anymore. She put her hand on my shoulder and spoke to me. You know not everything is lost yet, right? I looked at her and felt like I wanted to disagree, but I soon remembered everyone I still had. Yeah, I just don't know what to think about now. What about your sister? I looked up and knew I was being a terrible brother for not being there for her. You're right. I can't leave her to deal with this alone. I knew you were in there somewhere. This is the Drake I like. Julia smiled and embraced me. It made me emotional again. I miss her so much. I know. Know that she'll be alongside you during any of this. You're her son. I never was a good one. She loves you. Of course you were a good son. It's just, there were things she couldn't tell you, but you know that was for your own safety, right? I don't know what to think anymore. Then try this. Wherever you go, she'll be by your side. Julia, she's gone. Drake, as long as we remember them, those we love will never really be gone. Remember this, because it's important. She will always love you. I could see Harold holding the hands of Dora and Maya. The sky grabbed their attention when the grey clouds returned and the rain came back again. Julia and I got up and we all headed for the palace. I turned around one more time and looked at my mother's grave. But this time I felt differently. I felt determination. I was going to make it, and I was going to be there for my sister and for my friends. Julia always knew how to get me back up. I had almost forgotten that. Without her, who knew where I'd end up? She will always love you. Wherever Mom was, she would stay by my side. This was only the beginning. I still had my friends. I was going to continue fighting as long as I had them, as long as I had friends. If only that never changed.